Welcome to the Grand Illusion. Come on in and see what's happening. Pay the price, get your tickets for the show. The stage is set, the band starts playing. Suddenly your heart is pounding, wishing secretly you were a star.
Don't be fooled by a radio, the TV or the magazines. They'll show you photographs of how your life should be, but they're just someone else's fantasies. So if you think your life is complete confusion, because you never win the game, just remember that it's a grand illusion, 'cause deep inside we're all the same, all the same. So if you think your life is complete confusion, 'cause your neighbor's got it made, just remember that it's a grand illusion. Deep inside we're all the same. America spells competition. Join us in our blind ambition. Get yourself a brand new motor car. Someday soon we'll stop to ponder what on earth this spell we're under. We made the grade and still we wonder who the hell we are.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Utica. I'm Carol Gable, a member of the board and the worship committee. Whether you are visiting for the first time or have been a member for many years, you are welcome here. Whatever faith you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. We are invited to bring our whole selves to this worship service, our doubts as well as our convictions, the pain and joy we have known, our longing for connection and understanding. Every part of you is welcome here. If you're signing in today for the first time, we are glad you have joined us. We would love to learn more about you and connect you with our newsletter if you like. There is a link in the chat to a form that we hope any visitors would fill out, and we hope you will stay for informal conversation in breakout groups after the service. Let us open our hearts and minds to the experience of community and the wisdom of love.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Reverend Lori Staubitz, and it's just a joy to be with you on this beautiful Sunday morning, the 2nd of May. I just want to invite us to take a deep breath and imagine that we are together, that we're in a room together with beautiful sunlight coming through the windows and the images of spring all around us, because it is hard to imagine being together at this time. And so we do need to expand our imaginations And I also invite you at some point during our together time to show your faces, because I'm going to be asking that you actually look at one another during our message for all ages. So with that same spirit, welcome to worship, and let us begin. Our chalice lighting this morning. If you have a chalice that you would like to light along with me, please do. We gather around this flame this morning, the warmth, the light. Let us come together and remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edges of our lives. So much is changing. And to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, to truly be here now together. Until we can claim at this time together awareness and gratitude, and take time to look into one another's faces, and there to see some communion and reflection of our own eyes for this house we're creating together this morning, this virtual home of laughter, sorrow, silence, memory, and hope, is made sacred by our presence here together. Come, let us worship. So I want to invite you into the spirit of community. And when I talk about community, I mean all of us, children and elders, and all of us in between this morning as we gather for together time. We have some images to look at, because today we're talking about double vision, how we sometimes choose to see, that we often don't think that sight and seeing is a choice, but some of the events within our country this past few years has certainly given us different perspectives on how we do view the same images, the same videos, and see something totally different. So the first image we have, I want to invite you to look at, is the illusion of the elephant. And I want you to take a good look and hold up your hands to how many legs you actually see on this elephant. How many fingers? Anybody seeing 5? Okay. Can you work real hard to choose to see 4? And think about what you're having to do to really strain to see 4. Sometimes our brains do not measure up exactly with reality. So let's go to the next image. The crazy line trick. Okay, so this looks like a bunch of rickety lines. But what if I told you that all of the horizontal lines were straight? What if I told you that all the lines were straight? How does that change the way you can see this image? Crazy, huh? All right. Now we're going to go to a familiar one. Most of us have seen this, the vase face. So, all right, who can see the faces? Raise your hand. Okay. Who can see the vase? All right, this is probably one of the most easy ones to do, but even this takes concentration and choice. I have to choose to focus on the faces if I want to see them. This next one, of course, is it's fine. We'll go on to the stairs. The next one is this illusion of stairs. I know in the beginning when Melissa had put together the opening, there was an image of a sidewalk with, I wondered how many people were actually walking in the middle where it looked like it was going down into a pool. Well, here, I wonder how many people walk around this when they see it. And it looks like in a school or a subway. But we can choose each moment how we perceive. And so I want to invite you to, obviously we have some superpowers here. We have choices in how we see, and we have a little power over this with the ways we look at things. So I want to invite you with your fingers to just do this and put on your special glasses. I have here, and if we were together, you would have had this morning, your very special on glasses to look out. And what I want to invite you to do now, and perhaps, Brian, you can help us with being able to see everybody in gallery view right now. I don't know if we can do that. But I want you to look out at all the faces this morning and really gaze and see people. Just take a general look around at who's with us this morning. And now I want you to focus in on somebody that maybe you don't know very well. Now you're going to be hiding behind your glasses, so they're not going to know that you're staring at them. But I want you to take a good look, okay? Now I want you to see this person really well. I want you to see what hair color, eyes, have you ever seen them before? And now I want you to look with your special gaze. And I want you to see a little deeper. I want to invite you to see this person as someone who has great hopes and dreams. I want you to see this person as someone who has had some very sad times, but also some very, very happy times. I want you to see that this is a person who needs to be cared for and respected and loved. This is a person who needs to be cherished, just like you. And now I would like to invite you to look at someone maybe you do know well. Maybe someone that maybe you don't even get along with very well. And you put those special glasses on. And this time it's going to be a little more difficult maybe to see clearly. But I want you to see that this is a person who has great hopes and dreams. That this is a person who has had some very happy days and some funny things happen to them. But they have also had very lonely times. This is a person who needs to have connection and who needs your care and concern and needs to be respected, just like you. We have superpowers that we hardly even use. And so I would like to invite you as Unitarian Universalists to use the superpowers and also the charge that each superhero in our congregation has, the charge with our first principle, which is the inherent worth and dignity and respect for each person. And the seventh principle, which is that we are connected, and that even when we think that we are alone, even when we think that someone else is trouble, that there's something more to see there. And we need to sometimes use our special vision to take a moment to clearly see. So with that, I'd like to invite us to our opening hymn, How Could Anyone Ever Tell You? And this is in our teal hymnal, but we are going to see this video this morning. Thank you once again for all of our wonderful musicians who help make this happen.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
Our sermon this morning is double vision, seeing with the mind and the heart. Some of us, especially around Easter time in spring, may have read the story, The Velveteen Rabbit, either to ourselves, to our children, grandchildren. It's certainly a favorite. But there's a section in the story where the stuffed bunny, who's the Velveteen Rabbit, and the Skin Horse are together in the nursery, and they're having a bit of a conversation. And I love how this story brings home the meaning and message for us this morning. So one day, as these toys are laying side by side, the Velveteen Rabbit, asked the Skin Horse, because he had overheard the little boy say something about being real when somebody was asking him about the Velveteen Rabbit, and as he was carrying him around the house, and little boy said, "Oh, he's real." And the rabbit didn't know what real meant, so he was asking Skin Horse. He says, "Do you know what real is? Does it mean that you have like things that buzz inside and like a stick out handle?" And the Skin Horse said, "Real isn't how you're made. It's a thing that happens to you. When children love you for a very long time, or when someone loves you for a very long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, that's when you become real." "Well, does it hurt?" said the rabbit. "Yeah, sometimes," said the Skin Horse, because he was always truthful. And he said, "When you're real, though, it's just part of becoming real. You don't mind it quite as much." "Well, does it happen like all at once?" said the rabbit, "like being wound up? Or is it kind of like bit by bit?" Skin Horse said, "It doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a long time. And that is why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been lopped off and your eyes droop and you get kind of loose in the joints. You look kind of shabby. But things like that don't matter, because once you are real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand." "I suppose you're real," said the rabbit to the skin horse. And then he had wished he hadn't said it because he thought maybe the skin horse was sensitive, but the skin horse only smiled and he said, "The boy's uncle made me real," he said. And that was a great many years ago. But once you are real, you can never become unreal again. It lasts for always. I had the good fortune of studying in undergrad a whole semester on Martin Buber, who was an existentialist Jewish theologian. And he was born in Vienna in 1878. He was a professor at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem in 1938 to 1951. And he, of course, speaking to his times, and many theologians at the time, were being radical about the way they envisioned theology, because what was seen as basically the ways in which God was viewed were being called into question in a huge way. During the loss of human dignity and the Jewish Holocaust, it was really hard to maintain an idea of the time that there was a God out there that had any control, or that there was a God that intervened in ways from outside of nature. So Martin Buber was one of those thinkers and philosophers and theologians who really radicalized the concept of the holy. And he spoke about the holy as something that moves in and through us, and that it was anchored in real relationships. And so his basic theology came down to when we choose to relate to one another in the fullness of being, that is how we bring the holy to manifest in life itself. Well, it's been a great many years since Martin Buber taught. And since his death, we have had a lot more loss. And destructive patterns continue. In fact, we are finding ourselves in a time that is extremely challenging for all of us on a personal level as well as a global level to make sense and meaning of life. But it's this time, I think, where we can call upon the best of who we are and what we can do. And so today, I want to help us through Martin Buber and his teachings to put a little bit of a corrective lens on how we see ourselves in relationship to others this morning, and perhaps bring a different perspective. So for Buber, the whole idea of relationships was established in the sense of beholding the other. And for him, he used language, ik en du, I and thou. When you behold another, it's thou that you are beholding. There is no it. And he said, when we behold and perceive another as a true being in their fullness, and we acknowledge one another in our fullness, that we were bringing an element in quality to life that was more meaningful and beautiful and true. But he said that it wasn't just in our beholding the other, like for our first principle, it wasn't just our seeing another and granting them inherent worth and dignity, that truly our own humanity in that moment was expanded. And that's how this works. That it was seated in deep, deep, loving relationship. In a single course of a day, we are many things to many people, most of us. And we may begin the day as a daughter, a parent, as a neighbor. By midday, we may be a coworker, a boss, a community organizer, a musician, a laborer, or a friend. And by evening, we may find ourselves as cooks, committee members, lovers, and recluse. And each aspect of those being ourselves demands a certain amount of attention and focus. And we move in and through these different selves often like changing clothes, and sometimes with ease and sometimes with a great deal of tension and anxiety. And for the most part, the model of self as individual really means multiple roles. We relish our individuality, and we like the sense of us being unique and our freedom to define the world. However, each one of us born into this separateness from our infancy tend to seek out one another to forge something greater than this individuality and all this separateness. Sometimes we are even feeling more separated from ourselves. This integration of wholeness that we seek for in this internal sense of being, as well as this greater connection, is at the heart of the ways we choose to view our reality. When we are defining ourselves even as separate parts, in taking great pride in how many different things we can juggle all the time, we start to objectify ourselves. And I think it's hard to move to see someone else in their wholeness when we can't even see ourselves in our wholeness. We, in this culture, define ourselves by what we do, how successful we are in carrying out specific tasks and roles, and how we get things done. This concept of being has yet to take hold. And I can't help but think that right now, with all the changes that we've been through and the time we have had alone, that we can't begin to move forward to create something a little different, not to just go back to this kind of way of being where we objectify ourselves and we objectify one another. You'd think our family, you know, our first connections, where primary intimacy in that experience should begin in order for us to foster world community. You'd think that this is the place where we would experience this. But I remember even my own life as a young mother, you know, just captivated by the beauty and the mystery and the wonder of my children. I still was a parent who started out the day, and most of the things that I had to focus on were not about this beholding. It was more about, you know, are the lunches packed? Is the laundry done? Who needs a note? Don't miss the school bus. Don't forget to feed the dog. And then there was the role of work, and then coming home and dinner to be made and things to be done. And at the end of the day, I even remember my heart would sometimes sink, and I would think, did I even get to connect to those beautiful, precious beings at all today? Or did we just move through one thing to the next without really seeing one another, without that moment of beholding that Buber talks about? In our daily interactions, most of us settle for fleeting moments of realization and acknowledgement, for that kind of being present in relationship. You know, and our first service together in January was around Epiphany. And I told you the story of Annie Dillard, who spoke about seeing the trees with lights on, how this young woman who had been blind and the bandages came out, she described seeing for the first time trees as though they were just lit up. And Annie wanted to see like that. Well, it's that kind of thing, I think, that kind of epiphany that I'm calling for us to strive for when we interact with one another this morning. This moment of awe and wonder, and truly for who we are in our totality. Well, we know the results of this othering in our relationships, but sometimes we do that to one another in our congregations. As we look at our leaders, we look at committees, we look at our board and our minister. And I think we bring this objectification sometimes with these expectations of roles and do not truly see and value one another for who we are. This is the kind of work we've been doing this year since January together in our targeted ministry, is to not focus in on task at all, but to focus in on this qualitative meaning of being together as a congregation, what we yearn for. It's why we get up on Sunday mornings and come together, is this deep yearning to be seen and to see at a deeper level, so that we aren't just the person who can do this or the person who can do that we can be held by community. That's what we yearn for. And so, good people, that's the kind of thing, I think, a tool we can use to move forward, to deepen our experience of one another. So I know that there is a story from Ram Dass in How Can I Help, where he and Paul Gorman wrote a pastoral response book together, and a lot of ministers read that a few years ago. But there was a story out of that really I thought was very, very lovely and spoke volumes of this kind of seeing. And it was on a train in Tokyo, where there was an observer. A guy got on and he was just kind of watching, and he saw this man who was behaving very radically, very loudly, and very upset. And he witnessed an elderly man who was sitting down very calmly. And the observer, the guy, looked at this guy getting outraged, and he was ready. He had been trained, to do jujitsu, or he was going to get in there and take care of this guy because he was getting and behaving a little scary. Well, it was the elderly man who interrupted that aggressive approach and said to the man who was yelling, screaming obscenities and acting very, very strangely, "Come here and sit down beside me. Who are you? Let me tell you about my wife. Let me tell you where I'm going. Let me tell you about the tree that we planted, and that I have coffee every morning by that tree, because it reminds me of when we first came together and of our family, and we planted this." And he went on, and soon this angry, outraged man was sitting with his head on the shoulder of the elderly man, sobbing, because he was being seen as a person and not objectified. And I have had similar experiences myself, especially with people with some mental health issues that we often see on our streets, and so easily objectify them and do not try to relate, because we do think that perhaps they're a little too dangerous. But I can't help but think that when Buber talks about this beholding, the I thou experience, he said, is that it's this moment of choice when you are going to perhaps risk to do the one thing you can do, which is to have an open-armed approach to the other, no matter whether they're outraged or whether they're sad whether they're struggling, or whether they're having a joyful moment, to connect. And it almost doesn't matter what the response is from the other side, because when we choose to do that, we demonstrate and exercise our own power of expanding our humanity. So Martin Buber writes, and this is the language he would use: if I face a human being as my thou, then say the primary word, I, thou. They are not a thing among things. They do not consist of things. The tendency to objectify one another is foundational to Martin Buber's theology of evil. It's subtle. It creeps in as we demonize one another, as we think thoughts that maybe we haven't checked out. To see another as an it is to reduce the greater possibility that the relationship can have creative interchange, that there's something more can come from it. It happens when we link our expectations to a sense of accomplishment and self-esteem. And it happens to us over and over again as we think that others are there to serve us, like McDonald's. As a religious community, we're in this together. So I want to close with a few words from the song Eden. That music is and the music was by Collier. Sarah Brightman sang this, but I wanted to just read you the words. Did you ever think of me as your best friend? Did I ever think of you as uncomplaining? I never tried to feel this vibration. I never tried to reach your Eden. Did you ever think of me as your enemy? Did you ever think of me as uncomplaining? I never tried to reach this vibration. I never tried to reach this Eden. I believe our best steps forward in social justice is when we perceive others in their full humanity. And this is real. This is the real task before us. It's the only task before us today and every day. So may it be.
In these times, it is easy to believe in scarcity, that there will not be enough to share, that we should hold tight to all we already have. However, it is precisely in these times that the way of giving is a path forward toward community healing, restoration, and a new growth and renewal. We each have much to share. For many, it is the gift of financial support to this ministry. Some, it may be time and service. Perhaps you are able to give more than your fair share. No matter your gifts, please know they are gratefully accepted. We'll now receive the morning offering.
want to invite us to a moment of silence and reflection as we extinguish our chalice. And as we depart from this time together, I want to invite us to be witnesses to beauty and unfolding, to truly see the beauty around us, to use our perception to alter the course of events in each interaction, and to use whatever illumination we may have gleaned from the sharing this morning and carry that forward. Everyone's invited to have a time to talk about the service in a chat room with me, or there's another chat for just simply having some community sharing time. So with that, dear people, remember that you are a good gift. And in these very, very harsh and challenging times, that lifting up beauty and bringing it forward is perhaps the most powerful thing we can do. Go in peace and be led back in joy and love.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Think I can make it now, the pain is gone. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, 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 sunshiny day. Look around, there's nothing but blue skies. Look straight ahead, nothing but blue I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Here is the rainbow I've been praying for. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's gonna be a bright, bright, sunshiny day.